our baby's born is Chinese, and they freak out. I don't want a Chinese baby brother, you know? And then they meet the laundromat son, and they say, oh, Chinese guys are all right. Bring on the Chinese brother, you know? And then, you know, of course, happy ending, because it's a white kid. You know, the only Asian athletes, this was before Ichiro, before Yao Ming. You know, it was just ice skaters then. It was not good to be an Asian dude. Music, you know, there are still no real Asian pop stars. I mean, but this is before K-pop or J-pop or any of that stuff. And Yoko Ono was pretty much, you know, we defeated the Beatles. That's what we Asians were known for. And there was no Shango or Smokey or any of that, right? It was just, sushi was like the food that gangsters would eat in Black Rain. Like, there was nothing cool about being Asian when I was a kid. And the thing is that the magazines that were out there, the media, you know, the Asian media was lame too. Like, they would just present bullshit. Like, they would have like really bad sitcoms with one Asian person. They'd interview that person and say, oh, this is great, we made it. But it's a lame TV show, and the guy's playing like a delivery person or something who never gets laid, never gets to kiss the girl. It sucked being an Asian person. Anyway, so those were the magazines that Asians were making about Asians, and this is the stuff that, you know, I grew up reading, that I was more into, like, you know, punk rock scenes, and all these things would turn out to inform the magazine that I would help start later on. Flipside is part of, you know, like the DIY punk culture from the 70s and 80s, so, you know, it's just stapled, it's like really raw. You look at the graphic design, like this is awesome, you know, I love this. This is like raw, it's not simple, it's not art, it's just, you know, typewriter and photocopy and Zipatone. The singer there, Mike, we interviewed him later on from Channel 3. He had a song called Manzanar, but he was part of like Posh Boy Records and early punk. Like, you know, it was all interviews. It wasn't people writing. It wasn't Robert Hilburn saying how Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan are modern artists. You know, it was just people interviewing kids. And that really informed what we're doing. Comet Bus was another zine. It was more stapled and folded, you know, very small. But the thing is, it was a punk rock magazine, but there was nothing about music at all. It was just about culture. It's about, you know, riding your bike and getting food out of the dumpster and sneaking into the show, but he never mentions who the bands are, you know? And everything. And you design majors should take note. Aaron Comet was handwrite every single page. So, like, you could compare the letters, and none of them are the same. Like, he handwrote, like, a 66-page zine. So you think you're working hard. You're not doing anything. You're just easy way out. And then Thrasher, you know, like, these days, street culture, you know, you go to Undefeated, right, or Supreme, whatever, the street culture, it all came from skateboarding, though. You know, all the stuff, all the small, short run, colorways, and, I don't know, $200 t-shirts and all that. Rap, you know, everything comes from skateboarding. Ultimately, it's just guys trying to surf on the sidewalk. You know, Dogtown and, you know, all the cool, anything cool came from skateboarding pretty much, whether it's punk rock or early hip hop or style. Skateboarding is really the source of all that. That was part of Giant Robot. So this is 1994. That's Eric, he's my buddy. And we both like contributed to music scenes in the early 90s. I wrote for Flipside, which was the one that was on the left. And Eric was actually, he contributed something called Fear of Grown-Ups, which our friend Craig made at UCLA. We're all, you know, UCLA guys. And we contributed to this little zine. And, you know, I go to Jabberjaw, and like, there were Asian people at shows then. And Eric and I were both there, and this is the early 90s, so you have to think Sub Pop was going on, and the Chili Peppers were big, and we were these two Asian guys with really long hair. That was the style then, and flannel shirts. And like, everyone else is white, you know, and then there's two Asian people there with long hair, and you look at each other, and you could either be friends or enemies, right? And we wound up being friends. And one day, and we both, you know, wrote zines and stuff. And I was a writer. I was working at McGraw-Hill at the time. Eric was working at a photo lab. So, you know, pictures, words. Both worked on zines. Like, yeah, let's make a zine, but we want to make it about Asian stuff. So we did. And this was the first issue, 1994. And then that's the second issue. That's me on the cover. This is before KittyCon and all that stuff. But basically, I got a job, you know, wearing the Hello Kitty head, and I wrote about it. This is the sort of stuff we would do. you know, it was like stapled and folded. We said, let's make a zine. I want to make a zine. And I swear, like, maybe a month later, there we were, you know, walking around the dining table, stapling and collating, and then going to stores saying, hey, can you buy our magazine? You know, and it was small and photocopied and cheap, but it was like the greatest magazine ever, because it was, you know, 66 pages, it was thick, it was cool, and it was really awesome, I thought. So these were the sorts of things that were in the first issue. You know, these days it seems really quaint, you know, in the days of the internet and everything else, but you know, like there's a lot of noise music coming out of Asia. That's Guitar Wolf. They still play. I took that kind of recently, like just 2 or 3 years ago. But Guitar Wolf is timeless. He's always looked like a zombie. He's like Lex Interior. He just gets scarier. He doesn't get older. You know, and then at the time, you know, early '90s. So John Woo was still in Hong Kong, still making movies. You know, he was a big deal. Like you couldn't, you know, you didn't have Tarantino talking about him back then, or you know, there were no rip-off versions of his movies in Hollywood yet. And these were like role models for us because there were Asian people kicking ass, you know. And then that's John Moritsugu. That's John Moritsugu on the right. He's like an underground filmmaker from Hawaii, and actually he got in an industrial accident. His whole arm is mangled, but he takes the money that he gets from the government and like makes underground movies. And he still does it to this day. And the thing is, he shoots in high 8, or he'll shoot a VHS, and he'll like tape on two videotape VCRs. And it was just really lo-fi. He's super lo-fi and genius. Great guy. Toys, like this is before eBay, right? So we grew up with these toys, and American toys are lame. Like they don't fire missiles. You know, these are things we grew up with. I mean, we were already 25 by then, but we still had our toys. And like these are cool toys. Like all of you designers, you know that these are cool, right? You can just tell. Candy. This is before, there were no foodies out yet. You know, there was no foodie culture yet, but we would like write about candy because Asian candy was cooler. You know, it was, right? Asian soft drinks, cooler. Canned coffee drinks, cooler. Ramen, cooler. It's all better than American stuff. But when we grew up, like we would take our, you know, you break out your bao out of your lunch bag. Growing up in Orange County before Asian people were there, they'd look at you, and they didn't know that bao. They thought you were eating like some peasant food or something, like rice cooker food, But now we know, right? Bao is like the food of the future. There's like, you know, you can buy an $8 bao in New York. And then we started with skateboarding. That's a statistic. That's the one picture that we had to really rip off. But that's Shogo Kubo, one of the Dogtown skaters, and I got to interview him. He's a badass dude. So we started, you know, just having a lot of fun doing this. And I think part of it is that we weren't writing just for Asian people, because most Asian people suck. Most Asian people, like, they just want to watch Friends and, you know, eat norms, and go to Starbucks, and, you know, read Cosmo. They don't care about Asian people, right? Like they didn't, you know. But, you know, so we're writing about this cool stuff. But, you know, eventually you got to write about more than toys and music and kung fu movies. So this is one thing we did. Is, we were, like, looking for something to write about. And, you know, by then we went from the digest size to bigger. We were selling at Tower Records by then. We were using, I think we actually were doing, I can't remember what the design program was that Eric was using. But he was pretty much teaching himself how to do layout as we went on. And we were looking for articles, and I said, you know, every time I go to Mammoth, we go by Manzanar. Let's go to Manzanar, you know? So we just went. But we brought skateboards with us. And the thing is, we read this article, and, you know, and we thought it was so punk rock, you know, taking back Manzanar, you know, for us. You know, because, you know, most of you know, right, that's like a concentration camp where they sent Japanese Americans during World War II. So we went there, and this is like a super famous monument that, you know, it's in tons of photos, and it's kind of a sacred place dedicated to dead people. And the people that run these annual like pilgrimages there, they were upset. They were like, oh my gosh, you're skateboarding at this really important place. What's going on? But, you know, in the end, we're doing the same thing as them, right? We're trying to get new people to remember the past and make it come alive for them. And, you know, maybe make their own pilgrimages and screw it up. But you know, also, I think that we kind of, like, delved into more serious stuff. You know, it wasn't just those toys and music. And this was probably our most ripped off issue, like most photocopied and spread at schools like this. And this was our Yellow Power segment. I want to say it was like maybe 20 pages of 4-column, 8-point type with interviews of people before they died. You know, and then these are guys that were in Yellow Panthers or belonged to the Black Panther Party. And these weren't, you know, these weren't like coolies or, you know, really uncool Asians from the 70s. These were guys, you know, with, you know, berets and leather jackets and guns. And I think he was, people are saying that he might have been a stool pigeon, but the rest of the guys are rad, and they stay blue collar and working, and like, this guy was a Monashita, like you'll see him at Yaohan, the old Yaohan Plaza, like blue collar job, you know, there he is, mopping and stuff. And let's see, Alex Hang, I interviewed him, I went on a business trip, I was working from McGraw-Hill, and I was like staying at the Marriott, I interviewed him when I was in New York. And first thing he said, oh man, we're protesting that place where you're staying. So these guys were kind of revolutionaries, and that was, I think that was a really important issue for us. And it kind of went on, right? Like, you know, you can tell also here that the design is getting better. That's because Wendy signed on. She started designing the magazines with issue 18, the same Wendy that was in the Belkin pictures. She's my wife. But she was a graphic design student here at ArtCenter. And at first she started doing some web stuff, right? And then eventually she saw us working on the magazine and said, you guys need help. So she introduced the idea of having a template, which was totally alien to us. And then I became her production assistant as well as editor of the magazine. But you know, this is cool, right? This is like Adam Lau, he's a sea shepherd. He wrote about it. Luis Saihoyos, right? The guy who did The Cove. That's a rad movie. And, you know, we interviewed him. And I think it was also important that we would just come up with stuff that no one else would. You know, it's not just obvious stuff like anime or, I don't know, like, you know how movies went from Hong Kong and then Japan got hot with Beat Takeshi and then later on, or Takashi Miike, right? And then after that, Korean movies came out with Park Chan-wook and Kim Ki-duk, and like, we're riding all these different waves of cinema. But at the same time, you know, what about Chinese Jamaicans? You know, I have all these records, and I'm like, whoa. You know, like, what's this Augustus Pablo record? Who is this Herman Chin Loy guy? There's all these Chinese Jamaican producers. So I tracked them down, and a lot of them live, like, in Florida or Toronto, and they're still alive. You know, I was talking to these guys, they look Chinese or half Chinese, or they'll look, but they're talking like, hey, man, yeah, I recorded the first dub record. No, I discovered, you know, and then, you know, I gave the first guitar to Bob Marley, and you know, like, it was crazy, the stories. And I actually have a really good mix CD, if you want it, I'll send it to you. But that's there's Samtic down there, Byron Lee. You saw Dr. No, right? The James Bond movie? That's kind of the movie that exposed reggae and ska to the world. So these are badasses. These guys are cool. And the whole thing is to mash up high culture and low culture. You know, the East, the West, new and old. This is James Law, Cybertech. Do you guys know who that is? You guys should know. He's like this super high-end designer who does a lot of installation, like architecture, but he works technology into it. But he also worked on the 2046 set design for Wong Kar-wai's movie. So my friend Dan Wu, the actor, actually interviewed him. And then here on the opposite end, this guy, Wing Ko, like he's an old buddy that actually he filmed a lot of skateboard videos with Spike Lee. He did all the Rodney versus Daewon videos, if you guys are into skating. But his buddy, he's stopped skateboarding and now he does frisbee golf. Like he traveled the world doing frisbee golf, it's crazy. But his frisbee golf buddy, what he does is he likes to take pictures of trucks. He's like a truck photographer. He's really into semis, you know, like Smokey and the Bandit sort of stuff. and he's super into the Japanese trucks that, you know, they're all tricked out with lights and slammed. And there was actually like a Coke commercial where they tried to do it and they did it wrong. So here's, you know, not all the stuff we did was so esoteric or underneath 5 minutes, okay. Like we were kind of there for the big, like when 2002, how many of you guys went to the Super Flat show? You know, at Boca. How many of you were alive? Most. Anyway, that was a big deal. You know, like at that time, kind of art became rock and roll, and Asian culture became cool. So we were lucky to ride that out. And there's still, you know, for the magazine, that was kind of a turning point because we kind of became bigger, and I think more regular people started reading us, not just music nerds or film dorks. But it kind of became cool. Like this is like even before Juxtapose, right? There was no street art magazine or cool art magazine yet. And we kind of started that. And the same thing with the gallery. At the time, art was like, most people thought of it as this red velvet rope sort of thing where you have to stand in line or know someone to buy it. No, like anyone can get into art. Like why are you buying $200 sneakers? You should buy art from someone who just graduated from ArtCenter, right? Oh, and then this is like, Stephen Chow. You guys know Stephen Chow?
Yeah.
Shaolin Soccer, Justice Went for the Kung Fu Hustle. So, I mean, the thing is, we used to have to go to San Gabriel Valley to see his movies, or the Garfield, or Kohua. But now we're showing his movies in Hollywood, and doing Q&As with them. And that's good and bad, right? Like, it shows that, what we were doing kind of started to make it. It's getting out there. And man, we had a great ride from the bedroom to getting to do stuff like that. But I don't know, I don't know if it was print dying or if it was just, I don't know, but eventually it had to end, right? And it was a great 16 years, and we went from, stapled and folded to having glossy and shops and galleries. I made so many friends, like Barry McGee. Gong Li isn't a friend, but I had to put that picture there. Forrest, I went on tour with him. That's Josie Ho. She's like richer than God. Her dad owns Singapore, kind of. Big Joe, Daniel. That's Michael Lau Gardner, that guy who makes toys and sculptures. Anyway, man, my friends, and I made so many friends, and my wife, and I still do the same things, I realize. I still go to art shows, I still go to concerts, but there's just no magazine to make. And I was talking to someone about this, and I don't really miss those days that much, because I still do the same things, but there's just no magazine that comes out, So, what I'm saying is that things will happen. Like, you and your buddies are going to have these great businesses, and you're going to have fun and do cool things, but sometimes it ends, and it's not always your fault. It's not always your friend's fault. And, I was lucky that I was married and had a kid, so that wasn't my identity. But, and I wasn't just, left stranded as this, I don't know. But you guys are going to have, that might happen to you. But you're still going to be creative. You're still going to do rad things and surround yourself with good friends, and you'll find another cool gig, I think. I don't know, is that depressing? I hope. So after a while, I actually got a job at this advertising company. And it kind of worked out because they kind of see, I think it's post-Giant Robot, the advertising work they do. They try to reach Asian markets, but they're not chinky. Like, they don't just have the same ad with yellow people in it. For example, I think one of their biggest things was having Hatsune Miku do the Toyota campaign. Do you know who that is? The virtual pop idol? So what they did was they had that debuting at Anime Expo. So the Asian, it's hardcore Asian and white people who want to be Asian, which is even better, right? And then they had Ultraman do a State Farm ad. How cool is that? I love Ultraman, and I think you guys are all too young to know Ultraman, but to me that was a big deal. I thought that was very cool. And then imprint is the culture lab sort of thing. That's architecture for dogs. Imagine the person from Muji coming up with a doghouse. That's cool, right? And that's another thing I came up with, a talk. And then also, the other thing I've been doing lately is something called Save Music in Chinatown. And it basically involves getting together the layers of the punk rock of history, Zeros, X, Dills, all these bands that used to play in Chinatown in the 70s and 80s. And then having them play in art galleries, the art gallery culture that's in Chinatown now, to benefit the kids who go there, including my daughter, or our daughter, who goes to school there. So what I'm saying is that whatever, you guys, you're awesome students. You do culturally awesome things, and you're going to keep contributing. And your jobs are going to come and go, but you're always going to be awesome. You don't know how your stuff is going to, you're always going to find really cool stuff to do. You have to stay active and surround yourself with non-deadbeats. And, you just want to keep adding to culture, and, not just consuming it. And, ArtCenter is awesome. So thanks for having us.
Wow.